In this video, you're going to be taking a look at Zaalbar for the Black Series 6-inch line. It's part of Gaming Greats. Kind of surprised that Hasbro made this. When I saw that Hasbro was going to be making this action figure, I was genuinely surprised. And it was probably one of the most surprising action figures to me that Hasbro made in a while. I understand why they did, because it's basically a slight retool of Chewbacca. Other than the portrait here and the body, everything else is just reutilized from Chewbacca. Of course, the accessories, I think, are a little bit different. So it was a very easy character for Hasbro to make. But still, at the time of this video, I think Zaalbar has been out, maybe 3 or 4 years now at this point. And we still don't have a Mission Veo, and there's no hint of one being made in the works at all. Not saying that one will never be made, but Mission and Zaalbar basically go hand in hand together, and the fact that Hasbro went out of their way to make Zaalbar, I think they should have done Mission to go along with it. At this time, though, Gaming Greats didn't really have a lot of newness to the action figures. They were all just retools and repaints, a lot of things like that. But in the last year or so, Hasbro has been kind of branching out a little bit and making all new action figures for Gaming Greats, like Malgus, Malik, and then Bastila, for instance. So the fact that now we have Revan, Bastila, and Zaalbar in Black Series 6-inch form, it's only a matter of time we get a Mission. At least I hope it would be. And of course, all the other companions like Canderous and Karth and T3 and 4, even Jolie Bindo, you name it, we should get them all. It doesn't really make sense to have an incomplete Kotar party. So if you don't know anything about Zaalbar, he's I guess you could say he's more of the strong and silent type. You meet him at the bottom of the sewers below Terrace, and throughout the game he doesn't really say a whole lot. Of course, you have his little sub mission that you help him complete when you visit Kashyyyk in the first game there. But after that, you don't really hear a whole lot from Zaalbar after that. He's more of a character that you have along for the ride to clear out a lot of the enemies, I guess, because he has a 20 strength in the game and a 20 constitution, so he's a very strong character. But still, he's one of my favorite characters in the game. I'm glad to have an action figure of him. I'm surprised that Hasbro ever made an action figure of him. It'd be nice to get a 3 3/4-inch version of him, but I doubt that's going to be happening anytime soon. So for now, this is the one we have. But let's take a closer look at this guy. The portrait, it's really hard to say if this portrait is really good or not, because all we really have to go off of for reference material for Zaalbar is what we see in the game. And I think in the game he looks a lot more scruffy compared to this. So it's really hard to tell if this is more of an accurate, realistic interpretation of him. But I would say it's convincing. The main distinguishing feature about Zaalbar is his red harness here, which is very defining. Not something we see on a lot of Wookiees. Of course, a lot of Wookiees do have a harness, but Zaalbar has this distinguishable red one. And the color of his fur is a little more distinguishable, I guess. Much more lighter in color than even Chewbacca, for instance. So I have seen some people refer to this as like a chewed up candy bar before, and I can understand why that is. Hasbro could have done a little bit better job with this, and this Chewbacca mold is definitely not the best of the best that they could do for a Wookiee. I suppose it's good enough to get the point across. Like I said, the portrait, can't tell if it's necessarily a great realistic interpretation of Zaalbar or not, but it's alright. You can see his teeth, you can see his eyes. It's the main thing. As for the rest of the body here, pretty standard. I used to own the Black Series Chewbacca, but I did sell him at the time. I was going through and selling a lot of my Black Series action figures. Hopefully at some point I can reacquire a Black Series Chewbacca. We'll see. But you can see the rest of his fur pelt here. Has some nice details in it. Same with his legs and his feet here. And it translates to the back. There's the sword here that you plug in the harness. Yeah, that bowcaster doesn't want to stay together too well. I actually did lose this accessory for quite a few months, and I just recently managed to find it again on my shelf. So in terms of the articulation, it does have a ball joint at the head technically, but because of the shape of his fur here and the mold, you can't get a whole lot of range of movement out of it, just a little bit. But he does have hinge at the shoulders and hinged elbows, and unfortunately you can barely get by a 45-degree angle at the elbows, and that's just because of the shape of the fur here. But he does have hinged wrists, which again are kind of restricted because of the fur. Then yeah, it's just one joint at the torso, I think, for this one. I think Chewbacca has a double joint, and that's why I say it's a slightly different retool. Well, it's kind of a double joint at the waist here and then at the top. But he does have hinged hips, obviously, and then the sole thigh. Then the hinged knees, which again is kind of restricted. It's probably about the most you're going to get. And the hinged ankles, which again still restricted. And then in terms of accessories, this is probably the most exciting part about this action figure. Obviously the harness you can take off if you wanted to, but you would have to pop the head off. I don't think this is meant to really come off. That is an option for you if you wanted to take that route. But probably the most exciting accessory is that he comes with Bacca's blade. And if you've played the first game, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you find this blade at the bottom of the Shadowlands when you're rescuing Zaalbar's father. And you're on the mission with for Chungar, and of course he sends you to eliminate Freyr, which is Zaalbar's father. But if you take the light side route, you'll save Freyr, and then he'll reclaim his place as a chieftain of the tribe, basically. And then as your reward, whether you side with Chungar or Freyr, I believe you get Bacca's blade as compensation. And it is a pretty large sword. In fact, it's probably excessively too large. If you have it in Zaalbar's hand here, it almost looks like it's as big as he is. Just kind of ridiculous. Like, let's see how tall it is compared to him. And yeah, you can see that sword is almost as tall as Zaalbar. And Zaalbar is already a large character. So it could be a little bit shorter. But it does have nice gold color on the hilt here. Then it has the red around the blade. It's pretty nice. And then, like you saw a minute ago, you can plug in the back of the harness right here. And it stays in the place pretty good. And that's usually how I keep it. Zaalbar doesn't really look right holding that. But it does look pretty good on his back there. And of course, what would a Wookiee be without a bowcaster? And like I said, this accessory doesn't really stay in place too well. I had probably a year ago almost, where I was placing Zaalbar back on the shelf, and then this fell off, and then it fell within all my stormtroopers. And just in the last few days, I've managed to find it because I was going through and rearranging my shelf again. Sometimes, I'm sure you know what it's like if parts fall within your display, and then it gets lost in there, and then the only way you're going to find it is if you take everything off. Pretty standard bowcaster. I think this is basically the same exact thing that comes with Chewbacca. Not a whole lot to say about it, but it does have some nice paint colors though. It has this bronze colors on the actual bowcaster there, and then of course the scope. And as you can see, he does hold it pretty well in his hand. But you have to put it on kind of in a unique way in order to get that to fit in his hand. But that's pretty much all I can tell you about Zaalbar here. We'll bring out Jedi Revan here, who I reviewed previously. Would recommend checking out that video. And they look really good together. So would I recommend Zaalbar for your collection? I would now, because he's probably one of the cheaper Black Series action figures you can get hold of. I've seen him on GameStop go for like $5 even, which is not a bad deal at all. Not probably the hottest Black Series seller out there. And even though he's pretty much been out of production for a couple years now, he's still pretty easy to get hold of. You might be able to get on GameStop's website right now and actually find him. And yeah, I didn't waste no time getting this action figure when he was released initially back in 2020 or 21. I think I pre-ordered him through GameStop, if I recall correctly. It's either GameStop or eBay. So I've had this for about 4 years now, 3 or 4 years. But I don't regret paying full price. I mean, again, Zaalbar is an important character to me. Knights of the Old Republic is one of my favorite games. So it was an easy decision on my part, and I have no regrets. It's an okay action figure, definitely a lot of room for improvement. And of course, if we could get Mission at some point, it would be a huge bonus. But he's an alright action figure. If you're a fan of Wookiees or a fan of Knights of the Republic or Zaalbar of any sorts, then yeah, he's a nice action figure to add to your collection. But anyways, that concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews in the future. There'll always be more to come. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate all your support. And check out some links in the description if you haven't done so already. As always, thanks for watching.